Hey everybody, it's Beth from Yoga and Reiki Bliss. Thanks so much for meeting me here. Today I wanted to pop in with a little practice for the wrist. I've had a few of my students actually over the last couple of weeks ask me, what can I do when my wrists are getting cranky in our yoga practice? And, especially in a vinyasa flow kind of class, you're on the hands and knees, you're on the wrists quite a bit. So I thought I'd share some quick exercises to warm up the hands and the wrists. We'll look at a few things to strengthen the wrist, and then we'll offer some modifications that you can use quite simply, I think, in a flow class. And you can even alternate between them pretty easily. So let's get started. We're going to start with a little warm up. And the first thing we're going to do is just give the fingers a little wiggle, just a little wiggle, right? So that you start to wake up the joints of the fingers, wake up the muscles of the fingers. And then from here, we'll make a little beak with the hands and spread the fingers and beak and open. So again, now just waking up, warming up the muscles of the fingers and the hands, even the muscles in the forearm that connect into the hands. And then after you've done this, well, maybe like 6, 8, 10 times, you can start to make it into a soft fist, as long as your fingers don't mind. And we'll just do like a little fist and fling it open, kind of like you were flinging water at someone. And you can make it go as quickly, too, as you like. Bring a little more warmth in there. Terrific. We'll give it a little shake out. Again, we'll keep the arms up and we'll just swish the forearms side to side. Let's just do 2 more sets. Great. And then let your hands come to rest. Take a few little shoulder circles. And we'll circle in the other direction, just bringing a little more movement, warmth through the shoulders and the arms. Since everything in that area is connected, right? All right. Now let's take the hands and interlace the fingers. We're going to keep the heels of the hands, the bottoms of the hands touching, and trace a little figure 8. So now the wrist gets a little more movement through extension and flexion. And then make that figure 8 go the other way, the way that feels a little wonky. You'll notice I'm just trying to keep my forearms pretty still so it's in my shoulder, so it's not a big swirl of the arms, really focusing on the wrists. Great. And then we're going to bring the hands together in a prayer. So the fingers are pointing up toward the sky. Again, the palms are continue to stay touching. And I'm going to draw this prayer down toward your belly. And if there's a moment where you feel like if I go any further, the hands have to pull apart, then back up a little bit. So you can keep the hands together, the heels of the hands touching, and maybe you just see if there's a little stretch in the underside of the wrist or the underside of the forearm. And then we'll just stay there and breathe with 3 or so breaths. And then we'll bring the prayer up. And now flip it so the backs of the hands touch, the thumbs touch. And again, we'll keep the backs of the hands touching, and we'll see if we can just slide this down a little bit, thumbs touching, and stay at 3 breaths. Again, we'll flip it, come back to prayer. And one more time, we'll keep the heels of the hands touching, and we'll slide the prayer down only as far as you can go with the heels of the hands touching. And you might get a little stretch again in the undersides of the wrist, the undersides of the forearm, and we'll just breathe slow, steady, soft face, soft jaw. And then we'll bring this up, and one more time, we'll flip it. We'll spread the fingers, spread the thumbs, keep them connected. This one's a doozy for me. And then we'll come on out. Again, a little shake. All right, so now we're gonna shift to hands and knees. And we'll just start to play with a little weight bearing. So, it might be nice to have a little blanket under your knees. We'll be here for just a little bit. And we're gonna set the hands as wide as your mat. So you've got some space across your chest, spread your fingers. As you place the heel of the hand down, then you'll place the knuckles down, then you'll place the fingerprints. I'd love for you to imagine just a little feeling of like in the center of your palm, a little suction cup drawing up. So you're just not dumping the weight, right? There's a sense, even though you're rooting down, there's still a little lifting up. And then we'll rock the weight a little forward and we'll rock the weight a little back. Again, we'll rock the weight a little forward and we'll rock it back. And so just taking a little bit more weight into the hands, moving a little more into wrist extension, and then backing off. And maybe one more time. So you get to control how far you go with this. Good. And then we'll bring it so that the front of the shoulders is just over the underside of the wrist. So you'll see my hands are a little forward of what you might normally put them, right? Wrists under shoulders, go a little forward. And then we're going to rock to the right and we're going to rock to the left. So, you know, your hand will take on a little more weight as you rock into it. And even as you're rocking, can you keep some even weight into both the thumb side and the pinky side? So you're not peeling up on that pinky side, right? The thumb side stays anchored. And we'll do that one more time. Now let's trace a little circle. So let's go back over to one side, forward, and over to the other side. Just a little circle, dancing that weight through the hands. Keep the fingerprints super active. And one more little circle. And then let's circle the other way. Great. And then let's turn the hands so the fingertips point out. And again, we'll just go a little side to side, kind of like a little seal movement. And one more little side to side. And then you can play with this over time. You can sit back a little bit and bring your hands onto the mat with your fingertips pointing toward your knees. Now you can stay here or you can start to bring the hips back, but I'd love you to stop before, again, you peel the heels of the hands off. So we're just taking a little bit of weight toward the fingers and then backing off. And we'll just do that little rock a couple times. So you rock back a little bit and come back out of it. And one more time. Great. All right, come on out. Again, have a moment, maybe shake out the wrist. One of my favorite little wrist things to do is to encircle the wrist, reach the fingertips up as I draw the skin of the wrist down. I learned that a long time ago from a teacher, and I just thought that was really lovely to open up some space in the wrist joint, and we'll do the same in the other. It just feels kind of fluid and free after I do that. Be curious what you think. Okay, so two last little strengthening things that I was thinking about. As we come back onto the heels of the hands, or onto the hands, again, we're going to try to anchor the heels of the hands, so the heel, anchor the knuckle, anchor the fingerprints, and that little feeling of the suction cup. Now, without lifting the whole hand up, could you just lift the heel of the hand? We'll say the right hand to start. You don't have to do both at the same time. So imagine this like a little wrist push-up. Just lifting that heel of your hand and lowering the knuckles, the fingerprints stay down. Let's do the other side. So anywhere from like 4, if that feels a lot, 6, 8. I don't think you need to do more than that. And maybe you pick a few of these things to do before your yoga practice. One last little push-up. And as you're pushing up, you're really working. And I say pushing up, right? You're really lifting the heel of the hand, but you're not bending the elbow. You're not lifting the shoulder. You're just lifting the heel of the hand. So something to play around with. And then the last thing, you know, if you've got little hand weights, or you can get a 1 pound weight or a soup can, something that you can hold. I just found a little 1 pound weight from a set of wrist and ankle weights that I have. But you can actually do some wrist strengthening. So I'm going to use my block, but you could put your forearm on the kitchen table, your desk with your wrist off. We'll start with the We'll start with the palm facing up. We're just going to curl the wrist toward your bicep, towards your upper arm, and lower it back to neutral. So we're just creating a little flexion through the wrist. So this is a nice way to do a little strengthening. And again, I would do this anywhere from 4 to 8 times. And I would do both arms. I'm just going to show you one in the interest of time. And then the other thing you could do is to turn your forearm palm down and pull the wrist up. So the knuckles start to face towards your upper arm. So now we're moving into wrist extension. So that's going to strengthen the muscles on the forearm that do this movement, and it'll give a little stretch to the underside of the wrist. So those are some strengthening things. And I've got one more for you. You can place your forearm, again, with your hand just off the edge of your desk, or I'm using my block. And I'm going to turn, now my thumb is facing up. My palm is facing to the left. I'm going to turn my forearm and wrist so that my palm faces up. This is called supination. And then I'm going to turn my forearm down so my palm faces down. That's pronation. So we'll just turn through supination and pronation. And so I'm just using this little 1 pound weight. You could use a soup can. You could go higher, right? You could definitely go heavier once you get acclimated to this. And again, I would do this anywhere from 4 to 8 times, and I'd start with one set. So what we just went through is a set of flexion, extension, and now supination and pronation. Okay, then you would do the other side. And then once you felt comfortable with that, you could do a second set. So you would repeat all of those. And then you could always do a third set. So you're building more endurance and strength as you go. And then, of course, you can always up the weight. So those are some things to do to warm up, stretch a little bit, strengthen. Those are some of the things we just did, the strengthening piece. Now, here's some modifications. So if you can get your hands on a yoga wedge, it kind of looks like a triangular shaped foam, kind of like a foam block is made of, but it's on an angle so that when you put your hand on it, the heel of the hand is usually higher. And you can flip it so the other direction, depending on what your wrist needs are. But most people that I've run across these days have just been having a hard time with wrist extension because we're so much in flexion, typing on a computer, typing on our phones, writing, things like that. So if you can't get a hold of a wrist wedge, you could roll up your yoga mat. I just rolled mine up, I don't know, 1, 2, 3-ish times. You could do 4. And you would put the heel of the hand on the mat and the knuckles and the fingerprints for sure on the ground. So you can just see how I've just changed the angle of my hand quite a bit. So that just takes out some of the wrist extension. And then you could do your whole practice like this. Okay, so that's one modification. A second modification would be if you had like access to dumbbells or even like this thinner yoga block so that your hands can wrap around it instead of the hands being flat. And it changes the relationship of the wrist a bit, puts it a little more neutral. And it might even change the way you experience the movements in your shoulders. Another option would be on fists, if your hands don't mind being on fists. And again, the wrist will be a little more neutral here, or even fingertips. That might get a lot for your fingers over time, but you could alternate, right? Couldn't you? You could do fists for part of it, fingertips, thin blocks. And then last, you could do everything on your elbows. So like elbow plank, forearm downward dog. And the tricky part would be if you were coming into a lunge. So there you might just drop the knees and come into your lunge and then grab your blocks, things like that. So there are just some ways you can modify: rolling up your mat to make a wedge, or finding a yoga wedge, using a thin block, or dumbbells to wrap your hands around, being on fists, being on fingertips, being on forearms. So there you have it, some things to play with the next time you go to class, or the next time you hop on your own mat, just to explore and see what works, what makes your wrists a little happier. And in the meantime, keep building strength, keep warming up those wrists so they become a little more pliable and open to bearing some weight. All right, any questions, let me know. You can check me out at thisisyourbliss.com. You can always email me there. If you like this video, you can give it a thumbs up. You can add a comment. Comments are great, particularly if you find this helpful or if you have a question, you can pop it in the comments. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube page, please do so. You can also follow me on other social medias at This Is Your Bliss. And share this with your friends. Who doesn't need a little wrist love? All right, everybody, have a great day, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon.